Welcome to Online for Authors. Today I am chatting with Jake Lynch. He is the author of Broken to Beautiful. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you for having me, Terry. I appreciate it.
I'm very excited to have you. Before we really dive into the book and start talking about the whys behind everything, when a reader opens up this cover, what are they going to find inside?
They're going to find their thoughts and perspectives on life are going to be challenged a little bit. And they're going to find some scenes in the story that are going to relate to them a lot and characters that are going to relate to them a lot. And it's going to leave them wondering and kind of pondering a lot of important questions about life afterwards, So that's what they're going to be left with.
Fantastic. I want to know what gave you the inspiration to write this story. It's essentially, like, just in a quick nutshell, it's a girl, she's depressed, she doesn't see a way forward in life. She finds religion and kind of is like experimenting on all of that and kind of ends up coming, and kind of figuring who she is. Where did this story come from?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, there's a lot more backstory.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
but in a nutshell, like I had an encounter on a train one day with a janitor, and it was like the man left just such a great impression on me. It's like a small act of kindness,
Yeah.
And that kind of like set the spark in me to create a story about small acts of kindness and how they can have big impacts on our lives. And so, one thing led to another, and like I got this idea to write a story about that, write a story about that. And I prayed about it, and I'm like, God, do you want me to write a story about a janitor or like about this type of theme? And open the Bible, and it's like, and the first thing I found was write these words down, write it in a book. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to write a book about it now.
Okay,
So
I guess I'm
that's
writing
in a
book.
nutshell.
Yeah,
that's in a nutshell. But
yeah.
Yeah,
so I love that. I like how your inspiration comes sort of in the way mine does, in everyday things around you. You were riding on a
Yes.
train, and all of a sudden, ooh, you had this little spark, and ooh, what would it be like if,
Yeah,
and I liked that.
Yeah,
I liked it. Had you written anything before this?
No, I had not written anything. I was not planning to be an author at all before that. I had zero aspiration, and frankly, I did not like English class that much. It was one of my least favorite subjects, so being creative was not in the cards to begin with.
Not in the cards, and then all of a sudden, you just had this idea on a train, huh? Fantastic.
Well, like I met a janitor on a train.
Right.
And so he was super nice to me. And like I got the idea like 6 months later.
Oh, okay.
After that.
Okay.
There's a lot of backstory to it. So I was just giving a nutshell version.
But that's interesting how something that small, like you said, a small act of kindness really changed the trajectory of where you were going.
Yes.
Here's someone who was never writing a book, didn't like English class, who now all of a sudden is written a book. Right?
Yeah.
That's because of a janitor on a train. Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
All right. So the book is listed kind of as YA Christian fiction.
Yes.
And I'm not usually a YA reader. I don't know. I just tend not to, but I really liked this book, and I really understood the characters. Like as a 61-year-old woman, I related to these teenage characters, which says that you did a really good job with character building. So
thank you.
Why is it you think that this book attracts adult readers as well as young adult readers?
Well, one of the main themes of the book is loneliness. And one of the common things about loneliness is that it doesn't matter how old you are. Everyone like is or has felt lonely at some point in their lives. And that's the relatable factor that applies throughout the entire story. So we can read this character named Krystal and kind of like relate to her and like cheer her on and be like, oh, like she's shy when it comes to talking with people. Like and how she goes through these social interactions trying to talk to people in high school. And it's
Right.
like high school's awkward for everybody. We're all trying to learn and grow. And so I placed a lot of emphasis on making the characters very relatable because I want it to emphasize with the reader. I want the
Right.
characters to relate to the reader, because when you relate to a character, you're a lot more, like, you put a lot more emphasis into the story. You
You're
want it
invested.
to.
You want to find out what happens next. Like you're willing to
Exactly.
stick with it to see, like, is Krystal going to come out of this okay? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. She goes through a lot in that
She
story.
does. She does. She goes through quite a lot. So let's talk about her a little bit. She
Yeah.
starts out suicidal thoughts and ideations.
Mm-hmm.
She feels invisible. And there are several points in the story where she is almost like proving that she's invisible, like where people just don't seem to notice her and will say things like, what girl?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because I was shy as a teenager. I'm not now, but at that time, I mean, I think a lot of people are in high school where it's just, you just don't even know who you are, and everything just feels gross on the inside, right? and you do feel invisible. And
Yeah.
I wanted to go and shake other characters. There were so many times and other times I wanted to tell her, Krystal, just stand up and shout. Like, just let them see you,
Oh, wow. I really got to you.
No, it did. And I think that it's just because I recognize, I don't know, it's like I wanted her to be okay.
Yeah.
And there were several times throughout the book where, of course, you're not sure that that's what's going to happen. And so it's like, don't let the thoughts get you, Krystal. Don't let them. So, where did this character come from? Is this someone in your life? Is this personal experience? Is it a combination of things?
Yeah. So since this was my very first novel, I didn't really know what to do in regards to characters too much at first. And so with Krystal, I didn't try that very hard to make a character like different than myself. So I'm like, I just based her a lot off my personal experiences. Like a lot of what she went through, I have gone through myself. Like not everything to an extreme degree and such, but a lot of her does come from me. I'd say maybe 90% of her comes from me. Like we do have different backgrounds, of course. Like her family situation is different than mine. And also the fact that she's a girl and I'm a guy. So I didn't try too hard to make a character different than myself when I was making Krystal, because it was my first novel. I'm like, I'm just going to make a character and see how it plays out. And because I knew how to play the shy character, the shy, socially awkward character, because that was me. And I I infused some of my high school experiences into that story, like the photo shoot scene. Like it can get awkward every now and then.
It does. And I think that the reason why she came across as so, like, I was so interested in her is because you did put yourself into it. I really do. And the idea that we have to make these characters, I now have 3 novels out, and every character I have ever written has at least a little of me in it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how to write a character that isn't me as I used to be, me as I am now, me as I wish I were, me as I hope I never am, like there's like me as I fear that maybe I am. From sometimes you get those crazy thoughts that run through your head and you think, where did that come from? All of those things. And so I think the reason why she came across as so likable is because you were very real with her and you just let her be, Was it hard writing a girl character as your main character?
Surprisingly, no.
No?
Well, okay, hold on. No, I need to think more on that question, because I knew that I was writing a girl character from the very beginning. And, I don't have any sisters in my family. So I had to kind of guesstimate a little bit. And I actually had fun thinking about this, because I'm like, okay, I'm a guy, so I think differently than girls sometimes. Like I have different, like my thoughts can be different. So I'm like, as like, what would I want to feel like if I was a girl? Like, and so I thought about it and I'm like, well, like every woman wants to feel beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I took that concept and I put it into Krystal a bit. She's like, I want to feel pretty,
Right.
and she's never felt pretty. She's never
No,
felt confident
she
in
wears
herself.
black clothes and she just kind of like hides in and yeah, like I want to feel beautiful. Yeah, I liked that part. So
Yeah. And there are other like scenes within the story that I kind of touched upon, some like very serious issues that involve some areas down the line. So I had to kind of guesstimate from like what I knew or observed and
right.
try and like play these emotions out as I'm writing the scene. And just to be like, yeah, if I was a girl, I'd want to feel beautiful, I'd want to feel accepted. Like, it's like I think differently. I would think differently if I were a girl than if I were a guy. So
Right.
it was fun to
Right.
play like that. But with her overall character, I didn't try too hard because I still made her come from a lot of my personality.
Right. Right. Well, and the thing is personalities can often be the same between men and women. Like there doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a huge difference in personalities, but the way they play out
Yeah.
sometimes is what's different. And I think you did a good job with that. I like that.
I
Um,
appreciate it.
so we see Krystal convert and go from being a not even a non-believer, but a didn't even know much about Christianity and to learning. Something I really appreciated was in this conversion, her life did not immediately become perfect. I
Yes.
think a lot of times in stories we see, especially in Christian fiction, we see the person walking along who doesn't know anything about Christ, who doesn't know anything about God, who learns about God in their life. The angels come down from heaven and everything sings and it's beautiful,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Which is not true.
It's not realistic.
It's not realistic. And I think you really did a good job showing that this was a journey for her and that even at the conclusion of a journey, life is not perfect.
Yeah.
Not
Exactly.
everything was wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow and everybody's going to live happily ever after from then on. Amen. It's not the way it works, right?
No, like there's mostly a happy ending to most of this
Yeah,
stuff, but
yeah.
yeah, yeah, you're right about that. And like that was like I made I put a lot of emphasis into making the story as realistic as possible, which is
Right.
also why it kind of takes a long time. It's why it's a long book because I had to draw it all out for the long run. And yes, I agree with what you said about how her life didn't become perfect right when she converted. In fact, it took a long time. Like that was kind of like where the story starts to really take off more
Right.
after all of that.
Right.
And like it's just the way that life works is that we like sure we can change. Like we can change the way we want to direct our lives, but when it comes to developing character, I learned that developing character takes a long time and it takes a lot of different trials and circumstances that we have to choose to learn from. And
Yeah.
so Krystal had to grow a lot through these circumstances, but she has a new perspective on life now. She has a new direction to go towards.
So when
So,
things kind of don't go well, she doesn't have to go all the way back to the beginning again. She can kind of start with okay, it's okay. I can start from here and keep at it.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And she was
Yeah.
aiming, like, she wanted to change her life, like, even before everything went sour, but she didn't know how.
Yeah.
And so now that, like, after her conversion, that's when she started having better grips on reality and just learning the truth about life is that life is hard, but it's also beautiful at the same time. It's
Right.
full of pain, but it's also full of joy.
Right.
So, and that's what I like. That's what I wanted to portray in the story. It's like I don't sugarcoat things. Like it was pretty like raw in a lot
Yeah,
of
it
scenes,
was. It was.
and
It
that
was.
can disturb some people. But I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. I'm trying to tell a hard truth through a fictional story,
Right.
and
I
that's
think
what
you
I
did
was
a
trying
good
to do.
job. I do. I think that
Thank you.
it really brought out a lot of themes, and some of them, depression, loneliness, resilience, all of those
Yeah.
are in there. One of the ones that I really enjoyed was the forgiveness aspect.
Yeah.
She had a lot of things that she had to forgive in herself and other people, you know.
Yeah.
I'm curious, was that purposeful? I mean, did you think to yourself, oh, now this would be a good theme, or did it just kind of come up naturally as you were writing?
In regards to the forgiveness theme, I would say it was intentional, but not always thought upon, because you can't really change until you forgive.
Yeah.
And that's what Krystal had to learn a lot through different circumstances, like, like finding forgiveness in Christ, forgiving herself, but also forgiving other people in the story, to which she actually has trouble doing because some of the other characters, she has difficulty forgiving them.
Right. Which is real life.
Yes.
I mean, if you are anyone who's read anything in the Bible, we're commanded to forgive. And yet that is not, and it's not easy just because you're told to do it, and you can even say, oh, yes, I have forgiven them. And then you realize, except I really haven't.
Yeah, you
because I'm
say
still
the words,
holding the grudge. I'm
yeah,
still
you still
holding the
hold on
grudge.
to
I
it.
still have the, yeah.
Yeah.
And I liked how sometimes she was able to forgive rather quickly because she could see something in someone and I don't know, like just realize that I could. And then other times she found it really tough. And it
Yeah.
is tough when you have someone who's actively working against you.
Yeah.
It's tough to say, oh, I'm going to forgive that person right now.
Yeah. And like, we have different personalities with different people. And it's like some people you get along with really well at first, and then some people you don't get along with at all, no matter how hard you try. And it's like,
you may never.
And that was, and you may never, but like you still have to try and love on them and live with them because like it's just life.
Right. I enjoyed it. There was a wide cast of characters. Was that hard to keep everyone straight and to make them different enough that they were worthy of being in a book? Because you can't have 10 Krystals, right? Like everyone has to have a different motivation and something else that's pushing or guiding. Was that hard to keep that cast?
It was a little bit like, it was my first time doing it too.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out what was the driving factor, the driving motivation behind all these different characters. So one of the ways that I found a motivation for all the characters was I based them off of a certain problem. And that's kind of what led me to eventually figure it out. But it was hard at first. It took me a while to figure out because I was adding a lot of characters because I had originally written most of the story to be about Krystal and then like with Jamie. But then I started adding more characters and the story progressed even more. And I'm like, oh, wait, the story has to keep going. So I kept writing it. And the book, went from like 300 something pages to 650 pages.
Right.
And then and that takes a lot of space and time for all these different characters. But I wanted to give each character their own spotlight. Like I wanted to have Krystal be the main character, but I still wanted to give the side characters their moment with her as they interacted with her. And I had fun doing that. I had fun with how she just like interacts with different people with different motivations and different problems in their lives as she tries to be friends with them and everything. So it was hard at first, but eventually I was able to tie it all together. So yeah.
It is as you get more characters in a story, it can be, I don't know, I have to keep a little cheat sheet over here to remind myself who's what and why are they doing what they're doing to kind of keep things going straight. I'm curious, are you a plotter or a pantser?
See, that was the hard question that I wrestled with for a long time as I was writing it. It took me 5 years to write this book, for full disclosure. And so I was trying to answer that. And I had tried both routes, actually. I tried pantsing it the whole time. And then I tried plotting it the whole time, and neither of those fully worked for me. So I
So you're
learned
kind of in the middle.
I learned that I'm a hybrid actually. So
Yeah.
what I did then with this story was that I plotted out the major points for the characters, but I left the small details and the gaps in between to just be filled with my free imagination.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, Krystal like goes to this event with Jamie, but that's it. And I'm
That's all
like,
you know. Right.
yeah, I'm like, that's all I know is like, oh, something bad happens, but that's it. And I'll just kind of figure it out as I'm writing it, which is fun that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a pure pantser.
You're a pure
I
pantser.
go into it. I usually have maybe a character that is talking that kind of is like that's going to be the main character, or I have a general idea of like my last one. I think I went into it knowing that she is a granny woman, which is a healer. I knew it was going to be 1890s Appalachian Mountains. Yeah, it's about what I knew, and I just started. So I'm very pantser. I'm
Yeah,
very pantser.
it's
But
fun that way.
I've talked with a lot of authors who are very plotters.
Yeah.
I've tried plotting. It completely derails me. I get myself into boxes. My characters refuse to play. I tell everyone I have characters in my head, and I
Yeah.
try to plot, and they all stand over on the wall and say, "No, I'm not doing any of those things that you wrote down. And when you're done playing that game of yours, you let us know, and then we'll tell you how the story's going to go." I don't know. It's like my logical brain that wants to plot things out is
Mm-hmm.
not as creative, and
Yeah.
my characters are like, "Mm-mm. No, that doesn't look fun to me. I'm not going to participate in that."
Yeah.
So
I can sense the pain behind that
yeah,
answer. The struggle.
yeah. It is a struggle to kind of figure out like where do you fall on that continuum and what's going to work for you.
Yeah.
And then to be not only that, but then to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Because I've had so many people say, "Oh, well, if you're not plotting, you're not doing it right." And it's like, but maybe I'm not doing it right, but I'm doing it the only way I'm going to get a book out of me.
Yeah. You have to learn how you
Yeah,
individually write a story because what could work for you could not work for someone else. And you have to figure
exactly.
that and you have to just try and experiment with it. Like that's how I found out. I'm like, I had to try it. I had to try it both ways and then find my own way.
Right, right. So, what does your writing life look like? Do you write every day? Do you have a certain place? Do you have to have your coffee in your right hand? Like, what is it that, there's so many writers and we have these things that
Mm-hmm.
we do that help us. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so for me, depending on like my circumstances in life with jobs and everything, I still try to do some writing every single day, just a little bit just to fit it into my schedule because there was a lot of other things going on. With my writing setting, I prefer to be secluded and
Hmm.
in like a silent environment because that's when I get really focused in and I can get in the zone more. Like I could still go right if I were at a coffee shop or something, but I prefer to be alone because like if like the TV or something is on, I'm not gonna pay it. Like I can't focus. I have to be silent, and so I put my phone on do not disturb or turn it off sometimes, and just lock myself away in my office or in my room, and I just work on it for an hour to 2 hours as long as I can possibly write. Just get that flow out. So that's my preferred environment. I do not drink coffee. I'm
No?
not a big
Okay.
coffee drinker, but that's okay.
That is okay. I
So
don't drink coffee
that's my
either.
writing environment. There you go.
There
There
you
you go.
go.
We all got our thing.
Yeah. I went to a writer's retreat one time and it was early, early in my writing. I didn't have anything published yet. Wasn't even sure I should be at the retreat. I was just having all the, am I really an author, stuff. And there was a shared kitchen and I was just amazed at some of the things I was seeing. There was one guy who did this cold pressed coffee and there was this whole, I don't know, like he had these steps and he had to follow them in a certain order. And it wasn't until all that was done that he could go and write. And there was another lady who rearranged her
Huh.
entire room so that the sun was coming at a certain angle on her desk. And I kept thinking, I don't do any of that. I sit down and I write, and I wondered once again, am I doing it wrong? Like, what do I need to do? Unlike you, I really enjoy being in space with noise. And I think why is because I'm a mom. I have 4 kids. They're grown now, but at the point that I was first kind of dabbling in writing at all, I had 4 kids running around.
Oh my gosh.
There was never quiet. I didn't know, like you couldn't, if I had to write in quiet, then I would have never, ever, ever been able to write. And so I got very used to tuning them out.
Yeah.
And so now, like, I can go into a coffee shop, I hear nothing. I can tune it all out. If I am in my office and it's dead silent, I hear everything. I hear the furnace turn on. I hear the little buzz that sometimes happens in the light fixture, all of those things. And it makes me crazy. So I have to actually like get some noise going on. So isn't it funny how everybody has a different way of doing things?
Yeah.
So what are you working on now?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on a new book series, actually. So this first book was a standalone, but right now I'm working on a couple novels for a new book series. It's a different genre now. So instead of like a coming of age slice of life story, this one's different. This one's it's an action adventure novel, kind of like a slightly sci-fi, but like realistic fiction area.
Okay.
Like, so it's like the next book that I'm writing on is called The Lost Saint. And like series title is called The Chronicles of the Lost Saint. So that one's like the premise of a nuclear fallout that occurs. And so most of the world powers have kind of collapsed and new countries and cultures arise from the dust. And so it follows the premise of a soldier traveling from country to country as he endures through trials, tribulations, and betrayals. So it's a action adventure type. So it taps into the the inner boy inside me. It's like, I like action. I like it. I like danger. I like explosions.
Yes. So we're gonna have a little bit of that and some explosions. So would you still put this in the young adult, or are you aiming it at a different age group, or have you not really thought about it?
I haven't thought too much about that. I mean, I do think this will appeal to teenagers a lot, but also to young adults who like a good action novel. So I'd say like from teenager to young adult, but like obviously adults can read it as well. Do I recommend kids under 13 to read it? Probably not.
Not too many explosions, right?
Exactly. I like swords and fights and everything. And if you've read my first book, you realize that I don't sugarcoat anything. So
So it's all there. Okay. And is this one going to have any of the Christian theme in it, or is that left out of this one?
There are going to be some Christian themes throughout those stories. So some will be more direct than others, but there's going to be some Christian themes in there.
Okay. So it may again be a young adult Christian or I don't know. Do they have Christian action adventure? They might.
I don't know. I don't find too many like that.
But I love the genres today because it used to be, and now we'll go back and really show my age, but I mean, it used to be that the genres were very particular. Yeah. And you had, just a few buckets that you could put books in. And now when you look and you ask authors, what are you writing? And they say things like, young adult action, Christian adventure, with a side of what I'm saying, like
blending a lot of elements in there.
And I like that idea because I don't like being put into a box when I'm writing. I want to write what's in me, and then now for the marketing aspect, okay, we need to put it in a box. Well, let's see if we can find one that I might be able to like shove it into.
Yes.
But I don't like to write it necessarily with that in mind. And it sounds like you're the same, because when I asked you what you were writing, you were like, well, it's kind of like action adventure, realistic sci-fi with, a side of
it's a merge of categories a little bit. I'm like, there's some supernatural, but it's also realistic and a lot of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, no, I like that. I like that idea. So,
Yeah.
hey guys, if you want to continue this discussion, head on over to Novels and Latte Book Club on Facebook. There, you're going to be able to win a free copy of Jake's book, Broken to Beautiful. Jake, if someone wanted to talk with you about this book or the new ones that you're writing, or anything about your writing life, how do they get up with you? How do they get in touch?
Yeah, you can find me on my website at www.authorjakelynch.com, and you can find my Instagram link there, Facebook link there, and you could message me on there or email me there as well. So yeah, that's how you can get in touch with me.
Super. So, guys, all of those links will be in the show notes. So just take a look there. And Jake, I want to thank you so much for being with me today. I really enjoyed the book and I enjoyed chatting with you today.
Yeah. Thank you for taking the time to read that big old book.
Absolutely. You have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.